The market square erupted in chaos as Mira Okeke planted her feet wide apart in the center of Okiri town square, her chin lifted in defiance. Traders stopped mid-shout, their yams and peppers forgotten in their hands. The drummer's rhythms faltered. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath as the 17-year-old girl bent forward slowly, her long braids sweeping the dusty ground, her hands gripping her ankles. "Mira, no," her friend Ada screamed, lunging forward, but it was too late. Through the tunnel of her legs, Mira stared at the upside-down wall of the square, and her triumphant laughter died in her throat. The colors drained from everything around her, the bright red of the peppers turned to ash gray, the golden afternoon sun became a pale, sickly white. The sounds of the market twisted into something hollow and distant, like voices calling from the bottom of a well. And then she saw them. Figures moving through the market, walking upside down as she looked at them, their feet where their heads should be. Their bodies were wrong, twisted, elongated. Their eyes glowed like dying embers in faces that had no features, only shadows where mouths and noses should have been. One of them turned slowly toward her, and its voice slithered into her mind without moving its lips. "Now you see us. Now you belong to us." Mira tried to scream, but no sound came. Her body locked in place, frozen in that terrible position, her eyes unable to close, unable to look away from the nightmare world she had opened. The last thing she heard before everything went dark was her own heartbeat, thundering like war drums in her ears. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. This wasn't how Mira Okeke's story was supposed to go. Years before, in the small village of Onu, nestled beside the winding river Azo where the water ran clear and the fish jumped silver in the moonlight, a woman named Ifeoma wept into her husband's chest for the 6th time. 6 children lost before they could draw their first breath. 6 times hope had bloomed and died like flowers in drought. "Oba," she whispered against his shoulder, her voice raw from crying, "the gods have cursed us. We will never know the joy of holding our child." Her husband, a tall man with kind eyes and calloused hands from years of famine, held her tighter. "The gods test us, but they have not abandoned us. I feel it in my bones, Ifeoma. Our time will come." And come it did. When Mira finally arrived, screaming her way into the world on a night when the moon hung fat and orange over the village, the celebration lasted 3 days. Drummers came from neighboring towns. Women danced until their feet bled. Palm wine flowed like the river itself. "She is our miracle," Ifeoma declared, holding the tiny, perfect baby against her chest, tears streaming down her face. "Our answered prayer. Nothing will ever harm her. Nothing." Oba nodded, his own eyes wet with emotion. "We will protect her with our lives. She will never know suffering as we have known it." They kept that promise, perhaps too well. Mira grew into a beautiful child with skin like polished mahogany and eyes that sparkled with intelligence and mischief. But she also grew wild, unchecked, like a vine that knows no trellis. When she knocked over the elder's water pot at 5 years old, her mother simply cleaned it up and said nothing. When she pulled the tail of the chief's goat at 7, her father laughed and called it spirit. When she mocked the village priestess at 10, saying the old woman smelled like dead fish, her parents exchanged worried glances but offered no punishment. "She is all we have," Ifeoma would whisper when the neighbors complained. "Would you have us be harsh with our only miracle?" And so Mira learned that rules were for other people. Consequences were for those less special than herself. The world would bend to accommodate her, not the other way around. By the time she turned 17, Mira had become the most beautiful and the most insufferable girl in 3 villages. Young men came from far away to court her, bearing gifts of cloth and jewelry, only to be dismissed with a wave of her hand and a cruel laugh. "You think you're worthy of Mira Okeke," she would say, examining her nails. "Go find a girl who settles for ordinary men." But it was the old customs that annoyed her most. The rules. The taboos. The endless list of things one must not do, places one must not go, words one must not speak. Especially the one about Okiri Town Square. Never, ever bend down and look through your legs at the market square, the elders would warn children from their first steps. The spirits that guard that place do not take kindly to such disrespect. Why? Mira demanded one evening as she sat with her friends beneath the ancient Iroko tree at the edge of the village. The massive tree was said to be older than memory itself, its roots diving deep into the earth where the ancestors slept. Ada, Tommy, and Kyra, her closest companions, though they often seemed more like an audience than friends, sat around her in a semicircle. "It's the rule," Tommy said quietly, picking at the hem of her wrapper. She was a gentle girl, soft-spoken and kind. "Some things we don't question." "That's stupid," Mira shot back, her voice sharp. "Rules without reasons are just tools to control the weak-minded." Ada leaned forward, her face serious in the dimming light. "My grandmother told me that long ago, a man did it." He bent and looked through his legs at the square during market day. They found him 3 days later by the river, still bent, his body stiff as wood. His eyes were open but saw nothing. He never spoke again. Bedtime stories, Mira laughed, though something cold flickered in her stomach. Tales to frighten children into obedience. "I don't believe in spirits. I don't believe in curses. The world is real, and it follows real rules, not these superstitious fairy tales." Kyra, the quietest of the three, spoke up, her voice barely above a whisper. "But Mira, what if it's true? What if there's a reason for the warning? Why risk it?" Mira stood abruptly, her shadow long in the setting sun. "Because I refuse to live my life in fear of maybes and what-ifs. Tomorrow, I'm going to Okiri Square. And I'm going to prove that all of you, and all the elders, and all the generations before us, have been afraid of absolutely nothing." "Mira, please," Ada started, but Mira was already walking away, her head high, her decision made. That night, lying on her sleeping mat while the sounds of the village settled into quiet, Mira stared at the thatched roof of her family's compound. Moonlight filtered through the small window, painting silver stripes across the mud walls. Her heart beat fast with anticipation. Tomorrow, she would show them all. Tomorrow, she would be free of these chains of superstition. Tomorrow, they'll see that fear is just a story we tell ourselves, she whispered into the darkness. The next morning arrived hot and bright, the kind of day where the sun hammered down on the red earth and made the air shimmer like water. Mira dressed carefully in her finest wrapper, the blue one with gold threads that caught the light. She oiled her skin until it gleamed and braided her hair with colored beads that clicked when she moved. "Where are you going, looking so fine?" her mother asked, smiling as she pounded yam in the compound. "To the market, Mama." "Just to meet my friends," Mira replied, kissing her mother's cheek. The lie came easily, as lies always did. Okiri Town Square was alive with energy when Mira arrived. Traders shouted their wares, their voices competing in a symphony of commerce. "Fresh fish. Caught this morning from River Azo. Peppers red as blood and hot as fire. Cloth from the east, finest quality." The smell of roasting yam mixed with wood smoke and palm oil and human sweat. Children darted between the stalls, laughing and playing. Drummers kept rhythm in the corner, their hands moving so fast they blurred. Ada, Tommy, and Kyra were already there, huddled together near the edge of the market, their faces tight with worry. "You can't do this," Ada said as soon as Mira approached. "Please, we are begging you. Whatever point you're trying to make, it's not worth it." "I have to know," Mira replied, her jaw set. "I have to know if we've been living in fear for no reason. And if the stories are true." Tommy asked, her voice shaking. Mira smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Then I finally have proof that the world is more than what we can see. Either way, I know the truth." She walked to the center of the square, and gradually, the market began to notice. Conversations faltered. The drummer's rhythm slowed. Traders turned to watch this girl in her fine wrapper standing in the middle of everything with her feet planted wide. "What is she doing?" someone muttered. "Is that Oba's daughter? The one from Onu village?" Someone stopped her. But no one moved fast enough. Mira took a deep breath, locked her knees, and bent forward at the waist. Her hands found her ankles. Her braids swept the dusty ground. And through the arch of her legs, she looked up at the market square. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the world changed. The colors didn't just fade, they were sucked away, pulled into some hungry void. The noise of the market became muffled, distorted, as if she were underwater. But it was the people that made her want to scream. They moved through the square upside down from her perspective, but they weren't normal anymore. Their bodies stretched and warped, too long in some places, compressed in others. Their faces were shadows with burning eyes. And they were looking at her. All of them turned as one, dozens of these shadow beings, and looked directly at Mira. One moved closer, gliding rather than walking, and when it spoke, its voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Foolish child. The veil was meant to protect you. Now you see the market as it truly is. Now you see us. And now, Mira Okeke, you belong to us." She tried to straighten up, but her body wouldn't obey. Her muscles had turned to stone. She tried to scream, but her voice was trapped in her chest. Her eyes couldn't close, couldn't look away from the nightmare parade of shadow beings moving around her. Time stretched and broke. She couldn't tell if seconds or hours passed. All she knew was terror, pure and absolute, flooding every cell of her body. In the real world, the market erupted in pandemonium. "She's frozen. Get the chief priest. Don't touch her. Don't anyone touch her." Ada was crying, her hands over her mouth. Tommy had collapsed to her knees. Kyra was running, screaming for help, her voice cutting through the chaos. Myra's parents arrived within minutes, having heard the commotion from the next street. Ifioma saw her daughter bent and frozen in the center of the square and let out a wail that silenced even the drums. "My baby. My miracle. What has happened to my baby?" Oba tried to touch his daughter, but an elder grabbed his arm. "Don't. She's crossed into their world. If you touch her now, you might be pulled in too." "Then what do we do?" Oba roared, tears streaming down his face. "We just leave her like this." "We send for Baba Ajaneku," the elder replied grimly. "If anyone can bring her back, it's the chief priest. Pray he arrives in time." The wait felt eternal. The market had cleared except for Myra's family and closest friends. The sun moved across the sky. Shadows lengthened. And still Mira remained frozen, bent at an impossible angle, her eyes wide and unseeing, staring at a world the living weren't meant to witness. When Baba Ajaneku finally arrived, the temperature seemed to drop despite the afternoon heat. He was ancient, his face a map of wrinkles, his eyes clouded with cataracts but somehow still piercing. He walked with a staff carved from the wood of the Iroko tree, and around his neck hung charms made of bone and cowrie shells that clicked with each step. He circled Mira 3 times without speaking, studying her from every angle. Then he nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. "She has looked where she should not have looked," he said, his voice dry as leaves. "She has seen what mortals are forbidden to see. The guardians of the market are old, older than this town, older than the memory of the oldest living person. They do not forgive such trespass easily. Can you save her?" Ifioma begged, falling to her knees before the old priest. "Please, she's my only child. She's all I have. I'll give anything." Baba Ajaneku's expression softened slightly. "What you offer is not what they want. But I will try. Stand back. All of you." He drew a circle around Mira with white chalk, muttering words in a language that predated the village itself. He poured palm wine at 4 points of the circle, then lit herbs that smoked with a sweet, cloying scent. The smoke rose straight up, defying the breeze, creating a column around the frozen girl. Guardians of the threshold, Baba Ajeneko called out, his voice suddenly strong and commanding. Keepers of the veil between worlds. I petition you on behalf of this foolish child. She has transgressed, yes, but from ignorance, not malice. Release her from your grasp. Let her return to the world of the living. The wind rose from nowhere, whipping through the empty market square. The lamps that hung from stalls flickered and danced. The temperature plummeted further, and everyone could see their breath misting in the air despite the tropical heat. Then they appeared. The shadow beings materialized around the circle, tall and terrible. Their forms shifting and uncertain. The tallest one stepped forward, and when it spoke, its voice made the ground vibrate. She crossed where mortals must not tread. She looked upon our realm with eyes of flesh. She saw the true market, the eternal market, where the dead trade memories for peace and souls barter for redemption. Such sight cannot be unseen. Such knowledge cannot be unlearned. I understand, Baba Ajeneko replied, bowing deeply. But she is young. She is foolish. Punish her if you must, but do not claim her completely. Let her live to warn others of the price of her arrogance. The shadow beings conferred in whispers that sounded like wine through bones. The crowd held its breath. Ifeoma clutched her husband, both of them shaking. Ada whispered prayers to every god and ancestor she could name. Finally, the tall being spoke again. Very well. We will release her. But she will never be the same. Part of her will always remain in our world, looking through the veil. She will see us when others cannot. She will hear us when others hear only silence. This is our mercy and our curse upon her. Let her live as a warning. The beings vanished like smoke in wind. The temperature returned to normal. The strange wind died. And Mira collapsed. She fell forward, her body finally released from its frozen state, and hit the ground hard. Her parents rushed to her, gathering her into their arms. She was breathing, her heart was beating, but her eyes stared at nothing, and her lips moved soundlessly. They carried her home, and for 3 days she lay on her mat, neither fully asleep nor fully awake. When she finally sat up on the 4th day, her mother wept with relief and held her close. Mira, my precious girl, you're back. You're back. But Mira wasn't really back, not all of her. She moved through the following days like a ghost herself. She ate when food was placed before her, but tasted nothing. She walked when led, but chose no direction of her own. And when the sun set each evening, she would drift to the edge of the market square and sit there, staring at the empty space where traders would return in the morning. What do you see, Mira? Ada asked one evening, sitting beside her friend with tears in her eyes. Mira spoke, her voice distant and hollow. Them. I see them. The ones who walk between. The ones who trade in the eternal market. They're always there, Ada. Even when the living can't see them, they're there. Watching. Waiting. Trading their memories and their sorrows. She turned to look at her friend, and Ada gasped. Mira's eyes had changed. They were still her eyes, but they looked through Ada, past her, at something beyond the visible world. I can never not see them now. When I close my eyes, they're there. When I open them, they're there. I live in both worlds now, and I belong fully to neither. The story of Mira Okeke spread like wildfire through the villages. Parents told it to their children as a warning. Elders included it in their teachings. When young people questioned the old customs, someone would always say, "Remember what happened to Mira Okeke. Remember the price of her pride." Even now, years later, you can sometimes see her at sunset, sitting at the edge of Okiri Town Square, a beautiful woman with distant eyes, whispering to presences only she can perceive. The traders give her a wide berth. Children point and whisper. And the market itself seems to hold its breath when she's near, as if even the living world recognizes that she no longer fully belongs to it. Her parents aged rapidly after that day, the weight of their guilt crushing them. They had protected their miracle child from everything except herself, from consequences and discipline and the wisdom that comes from hearing the word no. In trying to keep her from all harm, they had left her vulnerable to the greatest harm of all, her own unchecked pride. Some rules aren't made to control us. Some boundaries aren't drawn to limit us. They are made to protect us from dangers we cannot see, from powers we cannot comprehend, from the terrible price of knowledge that was never meant for mortal eyes. Mira learned this lesson, but she learned it too late. She opened a door that can never be closed, looked upon a world that cannot be unseen, and now she exists forever in that liminal space between life and death, between the seen and the unseen, between the market of the living and the market of the dead. The next time you're tempted to dismiss an old warning as superstition, the next time you think the rules don't apply to you, remember Mira. Remember that curiosity without wisdom can open doors that should remain sealed. Remember that some mysteries are meant to be respected, not revealed. And whatever you do, never, ever bend down and look through your legs at Okiri Town Square. If you found this story as haunting as we did, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more supernatural tales from African folklore. Drop a comment below telling us about the mysterious customs and taboos from your own culture. We'd love to hear your stories. And hit that like button if you believe, as Mira learned too late, that some boundaries exist for a reason. Until next time, respect the old ways, honor the warnings, and remember that the world contains more mysteries than our eyes can safely see.